Thank you to our sponsor, MBA Growth Partners.
Welcome to Studio 501c3. I'm your host, Kim Jones, the CEO of Nonprofit Village, a capacity builder and shared space for nonprofits. This show features nonprofit organizations that provide critical and essential programs and services. They're charities that the IRS designates as 501c3 because they provide a public benefit. Often your donations to the nonprofits are tax deductible. We are also a proud partner of Montgomery Community Media, and MCM is your public resource that provides access to a variety of information and programs relevant to our community. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Jayne Park, the Executive Director of Impact Silver Spring. The organization advances racial equity, justice, and liberation by working for change in individuals, communities, organizations, and systems. Jayne, thanks for joining us in Studio 501c3.
Thank you for having me, Kim. Happy to be here.
Great. So Impact Silver Spring is working right in the community to fight racism, build the community. We'd like to know a little bit more about how you design your programs, what events you have that really help fulfill that mission. So tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So thank you, Kim, for introducing us and our mission. And I will just add, in addition to advancing racial and equity, we also focus on economic equity, because in our minds, race and economics go hand in hand.
Right.
So our mission is really to advance racial and economic equity and justice in Montgomery County. And as you mentioned, we try to advance that mission through 3 buckets of work, because we really believe that change has to happen at multiple levels in order for racial and economic equity and justice to be achieved. So we work for change at the individual level, at the neighborhood level, and then the systems level. And so our main focus with the individual change work is to really offer opportunities for diverse people throughout Montgomery County to really understand and learn a lot of the history that we were never really taught in school, right? So primarily the history of race and racism in this country, as well as in the county, and how that history of racism continues to impact the systems that are in place today, and that in turn continue to drive the ongoing disparities and inequities that we see across all economic, health, and social indicators for Black and Brown communities. And so our primary offerings in the individual change space is through the Weaver Learning Lab. Before the pandemic, we offered the Weaver Learning Lab, which is sort of a training program. And it had been an in-person 6-month-long training program.
And that's
for
just for individuals. That's not a...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the cohort is typically around 20 to 25 people from all racial, ethnic, socioeconomic backgrounds who come together to go through a deep learning process where we touch upon issues of history, as well as helping people really understanding systemic racism and structural racism, and again, how that connects to current day disparities. And we also introduce them to Impact Social Change Framework and help them to sort of apply that framework to their work in the community to advance justice and equity.
And are you finding that when you do that lab, there are a lot of emotions on both sides that kind of come to the surface?
Absolutely. And so a lot of the emphasis in the lab is really helping people to do a lot of internal work, and a lot of just understanding of how race and our racial identities impact our own worldview and the way we show up with one another. And so because it's a diverse, mixed space, we really try to help people understand the different racial experiences of different groups, so that when we come together to work in coalition and a network together to advance justice causes, we're able to show up just more healthy, more whole, and more human with one another. And since COVID hit, we've unfortunately had to turn that lab from an in-person gathering to doing it virtual. So since COVID, it's been a year now, and we've offered two labs, and we've had to shorten it because doing it virtually just creates more challenges. It's hard to expect people to be on Zoom.
So are the individuals that are participating in that lab, are they coming from all walks? Are they coming from government, business, educational institutions?
Yeah, it's really been a mix, and we really aim to try to have a diverse group. And we love having some people in the cohort who are from systems, who are working in systems and in institutions, as well as, grassroots residents.
Right.
It's a real.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. And I have one more question. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say that, we often in Montgomery County think about this benefit that we have of living in this very progressive community. But we also know there are these disparities that exist. And like you said, especially economic disparities. Working with individuals that can break those down. And I know that you personally, because I think we've known each other about 10 years now. You have this kind of unique ability to actually connect with people on a basic level and talk with them, and they just kind of are drawn to your conversation. So it's interesting to know a little bit more about how they can break this down and how you go through that process.
Yeah, so we definitely aim for that in the lab. We have some really highly skilled facilitators who support the group through that deep learning process. And before COVID, we had partnered with Leadership Montgomery and having our cohort members go through the Racial Equity Institute training that they had been offering. So we're hoping, once we're out of COVID and able to kind of go back to our normal 6-month in-person gathering, that we'll be able to resume that partnership again. Because I believe that, for those who have taken the REI workshop, it is such a powerful way to really deepen one's understanding of the history of racism.
Right. And this is an opportunity to also look at what kind of the new normal will be. And I know that your programs are very innovative, and therefore, other ideas may come to mind in terms of how you execute, what you do. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
so we do need to take a brief break, but when we come back, the viewers are going to hear more about Impact Silver Spring from you, Jayne, and we'll pick up from where we left off. Studio 501c3 on Montgomery Community Media. We'll be right back.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Greg, come on man, let's put a ride home.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to Studio 501c3, your window into exceptional nonprofit programs in Montgomery County. I'm talking with Jayne Park, the Executive Director of Impact Silver Spring. So we were just talking about your personal ability, and I before we go on to more, I want to ask you why this work is so important to you personally.
Such a great question. Well, before I came to Impact, and at Impact, I would say another core piece of our work that I want to lift up is that we're really committed to building a multiracial network of people working together to advance equity and justice. And before I came to Impact, a lot of my work had been in the Asian American community. I used to run a nonprofit in the Asian American community, providing legal services and doing advocacy work with low-income Asian immigrants. And then prior to that, I worked at the national level on immigrant rights issues.
Mhm.
And so I think, my most of my career has been spent working on racial justice issues, a lot of that from the perspective of my own experiences as an Asian American.
Mhm.
But I really reached a point in my evolution where I really wanted to do more of the connecting with people from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
Because I really believe one of my driving passions is this belief that in order for our democracy to work, especially in a multiracial context,
Mhm.
we've got to figure out how to connect across difference,
Right.
to find shared humanity, and to all be kind of working together towards the same goal of equity and justice for all.
Right.
So that's really what drives me.
Yeah. One other thing. When I look at the work of Impact Silver Spring, it is if you are literally building the community one family at a time, one block at a time, and there's a lot of resiliency that's required when people have been disenfranchised and
Yes.
these disparities exist. So how do you
I
model
love
that? How do you model that?
I would love to talk, and that brings us to the neighborhood work that we do that I'm hoping that I can spend a few minutes talking
And I
about.
think we only have about 2 minutes left. So,
Right.
yeah.
So for many years, Impact has been deep in neighborhoods concentrated with low-income communities of color. So a lot of work in Long Branch and Wheaton and Aspen Hill, and most recently in East County. And our network builders on the ground do a just phenomenal job of reaching deep into these communities, really trying to break the barriers for people who are often isolated and to connect them to one another in order to really build social fabric and social cohesion at the neighborhood level.
Mhm.
And in the process of supporting people in connecting to one another, we really support groups of people in identifying issues and things that are really important to them that can address some of the equity barriers that they're facing. And so at the neighborhood level, we are just catalyzing so many innovative resident-led projects. We've helped to support and spawn a number of micro businesses, worker-owned cooperatives.
Okay.
Right now, we're supporting a group of residents in creating a community garden in their neighborhood. We've supported groups of residents in working on neighborhood improvement projects.
Good.
And fighting back against, illegal rent increases. So there's just so much work that we're doing at the neighborhood level that I'm so.
And yeah, and we're about out of time, but I do want to get in that you rely on a vast network of volunteers and you do a lot of training of your volunteers. That information is available on your website, which we're putting on screen and we'll mention in just a minute. That's correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Donations as well. Donations are welcome to the organization and they're used to further the change that's taking place in communities in a lot of different ways. So Jayne, we are out of time, but I'm so grateful that you shared more about Impact Silver Spring, the mission, the programs, just a little inkling of what you're doing with the community. So I want to thank you for sharing this information with the audience.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. It's been wonderful.
For more information on programs, visit the website at impactsilverspring.org. I'm Kim Jones. Thank you for joining us and come back for another edition of Studio 501c3 on Montgomery Community Media.